Ash and Flo. This is Unbillable Hours, a podcast about professional services marketing. Stick around and listen to our insights, tips, and best practices to improve your firm's marketing and even your career.
Welcome to this new episode of the Unbillable Hours podcast. Ash, I think before we get into it, we should make a short announcement for people, right? Because we've been cooking something up for all of you, and that is we'll be hosting a live session of this podcast. That is a session where you can join and listen to us recording it, as well as, ask questions and all these good things. And we'll have a special guest on whom you might know. We'll bring him back. He's been here before. Luke Smyers, founder of The Visible Authority. Yeah, to essentially discuss the future of marketing consulting firms and how the business and marketing teams should be creating that future together, right? That's sort of the idea, where Luke will bring the business perspective and his concepts around how leveraged consultants, right, the practitioners, will be the driving forces and the pillars and whatnot of marketing success in the future. We agree with that very much. And then Ash and I will discuss a little bit about what implications that has for the marketing function. So you're very much invited. You will put more information about that in the show notes on LinkedIn and whatnot. Essentially, the way this will go down is put up a registration page, and then you can register there to get a Zoom link, and then you just dial in on the 20th of May. It will be 1:00 in the afternoon Central European time, so German time zone, so to speak, because we figured that might work for most of our audience, except for all you people in the US. We're sorry for that. For this time, we'll find another slot for the second session, maybe that is more feasible to you guys. So hoping to see many of you there, and very much looking forward to it. It's gotta be good. We had good discussions with Luke last time when he was here, and in the meantime, so I'm looking forward to this personally, and I hope this will be great. So let's get to the podcast, shall we? So I'm gonna hit record here.
Hey Flo, we're back, right?
Hey Ash, we're back. So short break there because I had to go watch some cows on the countryside.
Well, it worked out for everyone, right? You don't want to hear us all every week on end. A little bit of break from us is good.
Yeah.
But I did want to let the audience know that we actually had a really good discussion about this, touching on multiple points prior to hitting record. So we're going to do our best to, while we have a structure and a good day for what this episode is, we're going to do our best to bring all these key points that we were talking about. And Flo, why don't you let people know what we're talking about today?
Yeah, so we wanted to dive a little bit into marketing plays, right? As you might do in some sport, a play. And because we get questions about this, which I think they are being driven by the stuff you can see on LinkedIn, elsewhere in the Twitter sphere, where people discuss how lead generation as a main objective and strategy for marketing is dead, and people have to do other things like demand generation, all these fancy phrases. And so you and I get questions of what is the actual correct way to do marketing these days in a firm, right? What should be the primary objectives, what should be the priorities, and then also what should be the strategies. And I think we began this discussion by thinking about, maybe let's quickly walk through some of these phrases, and what it means, to clarify, and then from there take a step back and let's see if we can give an answer to the question, right? What's the best play for firms?
Yeah, let's start with the fact that we actually did touch upon, like, what does marketing mean and what does marketing mean to the firm. That naturally rolls into, like, you have all these terms coming up and you're seeing marketing is shifted, you're decluttering it, you're doing all this kind of crap. How are we actually helping drive sales and revenue? And through this entire discussion, we are really going to tell you that marketing has to focus on the sales aspect now. You're not focusing on the big picture of trying to acquire each and everyone, because we were discussing this prior to the episode. Right now, If you're looking at the professional services space, people are looking for services. If you're looking at digital transformation, all these things are coming in. There is a lot of work that people are naturally coming into the market. There's also the fact that you're losing a lot of people, or you need a lot of people to get this work done. So the war for talent, great resignation, whatever, all of this stuff is happening. And with that in mind, it's no longer about lead gen. And the reason about demand gen is to be more specific, to help your sales target clearly and, grow organically. But yes, you had the point, so I'll let you get into that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the lead gen thing, and I think you're right that there's in professional services, fundamentally, there's a slightly changed market dynamic right now, which is where demand is already high, right? In most areas of it. There might be niches. I don't know too much about HR consulting or any other places, but and the hard thing to do for many firms actually is not winning business but winning talent, right? But let's park that for now. We can, because I think the points we're trying to cover are applicable to both. What I just wanted to recapitulate is, so lead generation, I think there's the way it's presented right now on social media and other places, it used to be a primary objective and a key strategy for marketing. In that, you would direct a huge part of your efforts to prospects, turning potential buyers out there into leads, meaning getting them in some sort of funnel mechanic where you, for example, you start at a place where you have a loose idea where they are, which industry, job title, and so forth, but you don't know them, you can't really find them. So what you do is you put out offers like an ebook, an email newsletter, whatever. So they come in, self-identify, typically through an email address or something, and give you one tidbit of information about themselves. So you can then go in and follow up and communicate with them and nurture them through essentially email, right? Was the thing of choice back in the day. And I think, and you might have heard this segmentation elsewhere, it is correct that as a primary objective for your strategy is pretty much done for and no longer necessary, because, and here's the thing, social media, for example, is now so big that the fact that there's no more a need to get the person's email address first. You can just go and buy a bunch of LinkedIn ads and they'll see it. Does that make sense? Like, you don't have to bring in the data to start the communication. You can just go out and start the communication. That's what social media does for you. In parallel, for those folks who aren't on social, there is now enough data services where you can just go and buy the email addresses of people. So again, you don't have to spend 15, 20, 25,000 bucks to create a PDF report, a landing page, and a form to get the email address. You can just give a data company a couple of bucks and they have the email, and then you can continue the communications from there. So these are the changes that mean lead generation as we knew it back in 2014, I would agree, is no longer necessary.
And Flo, while we're talking about this, you literally gave me an idea. I think it's something that we can use here. What we're focusing on right now is conversation generation and conversion surgery. That is essentially the whole thing. It's because you don't need to acquire everything, and you don't need to, it's not lead gen, it's not demand gen. You're having the conversation to show what specific segment you're targeting, what specific service you're offering, and then your conversion surgery is that you're basically eliminating all the noise because you don't have the time or the manpower to focus on that. Maybe you do, and you can build up, but you have to do it in a surgical way that your conversion focuses on these key things. There is no need for you to have 10,000 leads and just get one person from that. That's lead gen would give you those 10,000 things. You need 100 quality leads from which you can get 10 to 20 conversions to serve your specific needs and sell your particular offerings and services. That's the direction you should go. And while confusing people with lead gen, demand gen, and everything, that's not the case. It's I literally had a conversation with someone this week where they were like, I don't want 10,000 leads. I just want 50 conversions that I need to do. Yeah. And this is not in my day-to-day. This is something that I was talking with someone, and it's Flo. Sorry.
And no, that's a very valuable addition, because I think that's also I forgot that in my explanation of what lead gen was. Back in the day when lead gen was a primary strategy and a primary objective for marketing teams, I think what you're describing very quickly became the ugly byproduct. Because if your entire team, what it does is hunt email addresses to hand over to sales or to nurture through email sequences or whatever, you pretty much do everything you can to get whatever email address in the universe. And then it becomes a high quantity, low quality game, which I think that is when people talk about lead gen now in a critical voice, they also, that is connotated in there. They think lead gen also translates into huge volumes of leads with very shitty conversion rates down the line. And I think also, again, this is correct. So this is what lead gen is, right? And we would agree that, that's not the smart thing to do. The marketing team in your firm should probably not do everything they can to just generate leads, right?
And
they will still have to bring in leads. We get to that. It's still an important step in the process, but it shouldn't be the primary strategy. Well, I mean, we can differentiate that a little bit.
Yeah, and I know your second point is like, what's the job of marketing? And before we get into the depth of that, touching on it, I know from what you said and what I've come across that everyone's like hitting on market qualified leads or marketing qualified leads, MQLs. Here's the thing. MQLs don't exist in a vacuum. If you have MQLs in a vacuum, you have the problems that we just discussed a few minutes ago. MQLs need to connect to sales qualified leads because that's where you're focusing on the specificity of your offering and your services. If you're just having your market qualified leads, it's just a bunch of email addresses, like designations and company and like the service sectors and all that stuff they belong to. But it's not looking at what their offering is. It's not looking at whether you're having conversations with them. It's not looking at what is the need so that you can actually do the conversion. Otherwise, it's needed and necessary because
it's still in the chain, right? It's still a link in the chain.
Yeah.
It's just that the emphasis is no longer on that specific link, but something that's far more further downstream, where, like you said, maybe it's sales qualified leads, maybe it's pipeline, maybe it's even revenue, which was sourced through some marketing activity, whatever. But I mean, okay, so lead gen, this game of get as many emails as you can through whatever tricks you can fathom, sort of dead. And now everybody talks about demand gen, and I'm not an expert in all these phrases, but I think the way you can think about that is just, it is about creating specific demand. So not just demand, like you said, for digital transformation in general, but demand for the digital transformation services your firm is offering. So that's the idea here is, and how do you do that? You go out and you basically educate the market around, what you think their challenges are, what you have understood their obstacles are, and how you would solve it. Essentially, that's educational content or thought leadership-driven marketing, pretty much like consulting firms have done it for ages. And the idea here is that once you do that, and if you do it well enough, people will come by themselves and raise their hand and say that this was very convincing. We would like to buy from you. So operationally, the focus shifts from creating stuff that is good enough to have people give us their email addresses to something which is probably more difficult because we need very high quality, very relevant, very much resonating messaging, right? We have to have very good educational content, and we have to find ways to package it so that it really stands out in the marketplace. People find it in awareness channels, social, somewhere else, so that this demand actually gets built. So it's a bit, I don't know if you agree, but I would say it's the more difficult game of marketing, like creating an overpitched, clickbaity ebook that collects a bunch of worthless email addresses is probably fairly easy. Actually driving specific demand for what your firm has to offer, that requires a bit more.
Actually, I want to touch on
marketing
this because
jobs.
you were talking about like you were talking about like thought leadership and building awareness and that kind of stuff. I think, and I agree, while thought leadership is important, what we need to focus on right now is conversational marketing. Not thought leadership plays a role in conversational marketing. By that I mean it's not about the ebook. It's not like a massive piece of like 10,000 word essays. Nothing like that. What you need is distill them into like points that the person who's doing the sales, the person who's having these conversations, can use specifically to say, this is what's happening, this is what you need, and this is what I offer. That happens in a conversation, not getting someone to read like a long report. So
that's a very good point, because what you're saying there is that not only does the measuring of success, right, isn't on the first thing in the chain, but shifts backward. The method isn't so much pitching people on a clickbaity ebook to get their email address. It's more about educating them a long time. And what you're saying there is also the kinds of assets you need change, because as it becomes more conversational, and you don't need the ebook to get the email address. Instead, you can maybe have an interesting conversation, to use your word, via LinkedIn. You still have to have something interesting to say in those conversations, which that then becomes I'm not sure whether that is different from thought leadership or whether that's just thought leadership in a different form. But I fully agree with you. Yeah. It's not the thing people typically think about now, like the 3-month heavy lift project that results in a 33-page report. Yeah. That's no longer it.
Yeah. Exactly. It's thought leadership in a different form, which basically means this: the massive PDF document that you create that pushes like a specific readership or something, give them to specific audiences. Like lawyers, they read them. Give them that. They need it. They love it. You're talking about like consultants. You're talking about like management service, consultancy services, strategy, all of that. Don't bother. Yeah. What you need is to hand your key people some key findings, some key offerings, and some key things packaged so that they are educated enough to present the information in the best way possible, backed by whatever research and findings you have. And this is speaking for all of us, we've already discussed how many people sit and read like a long piece of thought leadership. Not many. If these sales leaders go ahead and like start the conversation and say, by the way, you can find all of this in this ginormous document that we have, you've lost. You lost the game. You lost the person, because they'll have to like spend time reading it. Then they have to come back to you. They have to identify what they want. None of that works. You have to think about it in this, like if you were in a meeting room with this person and having this conversation, what would you be saying? You'd be saying, I need to talk about this, this, and this. That's what you do on your other platforms, your digital platforms. You basically just say, this is the kind of conversation that I'm looking for. And look at that. I'm not seeing a lot of that in our space. I'm still seeing a lot of people saying 1 or 2 points and then linking to a massive article or something. That kind of marketing needs to change in this specific environment. And we still aren't there yet, especially in professional service.
Yeah, still bit back and forth. I still have
intent marketing.
To say we need to do lead generation. Then I have to give them this explanation, sort of, which we're giving here. Yeah. Maybe to reduce the confusion, like lead gen, demand gen, all these marketing phrases, right? I think we can just take a step back and look at what actually is the job. And I think we already referenced it here and there. I just wanted to summarize and clarify it. I think, and I don't know if you agree, but I would say the job is to build awareness, right? And then create specific demand and preference. If there's a choice between 2 or 3 firms, marketing's job is to make sure you, the client, prefer my firm, right? So awareness, specific demand, preference for the firm's services. That's it, right? And then bring in, I want to make this very clear because the leads are not that, bring in high intent leads, right? So all these people who are aware of your firm, at some point in time, you have to lead them down the path that they do become something that comes before an actual opportunity, before an actual pitch, before an actual sale, right? This is still a link in the chain. Sorry, the lead is not that in my book.
Sorry to interrupt you, Flo. I do want to be very specific about the preferences. When you are talking about preferences, you should compare yourself to competitors, but don't do the bullshit that one of those companies that, that competes with a former guest on our show did. Do not talk down about your clients and do not talk down about your competitors. In fact, what you should be doing is you should focus on the services and offerings that you do well and you do better, and then say that if they want these kinds of things, they can go there. When you're confident enough to say they can go there, they won't go there, they'll come to you because you know what you're saying. But if you don't do that, and if you just say that they are, all this crap, and pardon my French, it doesn't work.
And the what you're referencing there, so the integrity with which you do it, I think that translates into my metaphor, because I had this when I have to summarize this even further, and someone says, well, what is the marketing play to play in 2022? I now tell everybody the right way to think about marketing is just a form of consulting. It just happens to be free to your clients, right? So it's just a portfolio extension. If you think about this, your most expensive services will probably involve your most senior folks, right? There may be C-suite engagements, high ticket stuff. Further down the line is maybe something that's a bit more closer to outsourcing, or you're just doing work for the client. Maybe your managers, your junior staff, right? And then just go down the chain further and think marketing the very same way. It's something your firm offers that helps clients overcome problems. They just have to do it yourself after engaging with the content. So marketing is consulting, essentially, or it's the continuation of your consulting through editorial means. That is the play to play. That's it. That's literally it. And that's the way you have to think about it, by the way, also. Don't spam, don't annoy people with your newsletters. No, actually help them overcome a specific challenge through preferably a methodology of your own, or that is sort of somewhat unique to yourself. And make sure that they can be successful with it, right? That's also important.
I completely agree, Flo. And I think something that we need to tell people here is that the vehicle for this, one of the key vehicles for this, is strategic content marketing.
Yeah.
Digital marketing, channels, all these things are important. But what goes onto everything is your content, and everywhere it's content. And that's where that's where your narrative and your messaging and everything sits. So your key focus should be on your marketing vehicle, which is your strategic content marketing. And I think, Flo, there's so much on that topic that we should leave that for a different episode.
Yeah.
And
we've touched upon it in previous episodes as well. But
yes.
Again, I think that if you think about it like this, the core idea is marketing is really just consulting through editorial means, rather than you sending your consultants and being there and charging for it, right? And it's you do it for free or at the cost of the client's time. This then also, and we get into this, helps you understand a few things about, for example, how do we measure success around like these types of things, right? Because suddenly it does become about, do our ideal clients see the stuff we put out? Do they like it? Is it actually helpful for them? All these things. It's no longer about how many email addresses did we get, right? It's a fundamental change of that game. And once you get into that territory, that's when you are on the correct way. And I just wanted to point out one thing I said there, sorry for that, but that's another difference between, if you want to go back into these phrases, lead gen and demand gen. In my experience, lead gen cares very little about how helpful a piece of content, to your point, is, right? As long as the headline and the abstract and the landing page is good enough for you to leave your email address, a lead gen strategic marketer will be happy because they've gotten your email address. Not to put too fine a point on it, but we all know this. We've all given away our addresses to download a white paper or some shit, and we read it and we were like, what the fuck was this, right? That was not worth my email address, much less my time. And there's tons of that. And with demand generation, if you're serious about it, you can't get away with that, because you have to deeply, deeply, deeply care with how much this helps your reader be successful. This has to be the same experience as your actual consulting service, right? Where you also want to have project success for the client.
I would even argue that we focus on a specific subsector of demand gen. The reason why I say about demand generation is because there is existing and pent-up demand in the market right now.
Lots of spaces
for all kinds of services. You don't need to tell people, by the way, you need this. They know they need this. You need to tell people right now, this is how we can solve it together.
Yeah. You need this method, or here's why you want to go with how we do it. That's an idea, right? Yeah. And this is true in both directions. If you have a proprietary process and a unique culture and just an interesting way of solving the problem, your chances of people coming to you, like wanting to work with you, is also higher than if you don't have that. But to not put a too fine a point on it. So in trying to wrap this up, I guess our main point was, yes, there has been a shift, right? Both in the market, you said it, lots of pent up demand, so that's changing the game alone, in professional services specifically. But there's also a shift away from lead gen, where we have to do marketing to acquire contact information so we can sell to people, to demand gen, which is where we just use the channels we have to communicate with people so that they come to us to buy. That's a different game. But I think the second point we made, where you might as well also just not care about these differences in models, as long as you keep in mind, look, the best marketing play to play is to think of your marketing as just consulting through editorial means. That's what it is. And I think that is in part us saying the old is new again, right? Because if you think back into the days of the foundation of strategic management consulting, Bruce Henderson, BCG, McKinsey, all these types of things, that's how it used to work. They came up with great ideas. They educate the world about them, the BCG matrix, time-based competition, business reengineering, whatnot. And that created demand for that specific service. And so people went to BCG or to McKinsey for this or for that. And that's how it used to work. And I think that game is very much back. And a lot of these other things we used to do maybe in between, shitty white books in exchange for your email address, those are dead and good riddance, I think. I don't know. Do you have any further points?
I think, let's put it this way. The tools have matured. The operating space, as some people call it, platforms. I really prefer it's the operating space that's matured. The digital operating space.
Yeah.
In such a time, we need to not focus on the technology and the channels.
Excellent
you need
point.
to focus on the strategy, not the tactics. All the platforms and all that kind of stuff, they're just your tactical thing. Bring back the strategy that you're talking about. Stuff that Bruce Henderson said, stuff when we had like the big 8 and all of that existed. That's what you need right now.
Yeah, and I think that's very good. Yeah, I like that point about there's now feature parity and all that stuff between technologies. You will not find a competitive edge in using, I don't know, Google better than Bing or better than your competitors. Everybody's doing all that stuff. So it really comes down to the strategy. And 2, like we said, the play. And that means the intent with which you do the marketing and the ends you set your sights upon. And that shouldn't be getting email addresses to spam people.
Yeah.
Anyways, which is not me saying that you won't need an email address at some point in time, to be very clear. That stuff still exists, right?
Let's
link in the chain and such. Yeah?
Yeah, just I was saying, the conversation marketing, think about it that way. If the way to communicate with that person is the email address, then of course you need the email address.
Yeah.
But focus on the fact that this is another human being like you used to talk to in the days before you and I were even considering marketing, because this goes before our time. That's what you need to bring back, because right now trust is really, really key. And if you want to build that trust to get all of these things done, then you got to stop, collecting email addresses and start looking at conversations first.
Yeah. All right. I'll try to, at the end. So this is the play, right? Marketing should just be consulting through editorial means and for free. So how do you do that? I think we've said this a gazillion times on this podcast in various ways and formats, and trying to just repeat ourselves once here. The idea is you focus on a very specific audience, right? Who's this for? And the issues you see them having. And then you innovate and educate around specific solutions to that. And that's the front end of your marketing done. That's the awareness and maybe even the preference part. But then you also need a client journey. That's also marketing handiwork, right? You need some sort of client journey to then convert the people who are aware and interested and maybe prefer your firm into something that you can actually.
I would like to add,
it's conducive to doing business. Yeah,
not just a client journey; it's a content journey.
Yeah, I think I agree, but I think that would correspond. And to the points both our guests Stephen Pope and also Luke Smeyers made. If you do this, if you think of marketing as just a free version of consulting, that should be easy to do, because there will already be high overlap between the marketing stuff you put out and the actual consulting work you do. So these things should become easier. And the last point I wanted to make, and I just forgot that. So as you build the client journey and the content journey, what that should do is it should either get the people who are now aware of you engage with the firm and eventually buy something, or, and this is equally important, disqualify them out of the gate. Because we had this early on, one of the problems of the lead gen model was you would end up having email addresses from God knows whom, and you would have to sort through those and follow up and distinguish the good from the bad, which was a very costly endeavor. You shouldn't be in that situation anymore. Your marketing, your messaging should be so clear and distinctive that people can determine by themselves on their own time that this is not for them and just walk. That's something you also want out of proper demand generation. You just don't want, this is why I said specific demand, right? You don't want any demand. You want perfect fit excellent demand of prospects who you have a very high chance of making successful for what you offer. Everybody else should just move along or buy somewhere else. Those are my closing remarks.
No, that's good. Like I think for this particular episode, it's hard to like just summarize everything. And
yeah,
I would
like
just
summarize
say,
it 3 times already, but yeah.
I would recommend just, if you think that there is any question that you'd like to ask either of us, just reach out. We're always available to talk. And if you need some help thinking through these things, again, we're there to talk.
Yeah, brilliant. And with that, I would say you have a nice rest of the week. Well, that's not long. A nice weekend eventually.
Yeah. And we will be back.
Thanks for listening to Unbillable Hours. If you want more, tune in next week. You know where to find us.